Guys, we have a problem, a big problem. Yesterday I took this thing for a test drive after we'd just done so much work on it. So we swapped out the intake manifold for a brand new one, we swapped out glow plug module, we swapped out the crankcase breather, we gutted the DPF and the catalytic converter, we done an EGR and EGR cooler delete. And then we took this thing for a test drive, like I said, and we broke down. We couldn't get this thing home. So what happened? So then, like I said, I took it for a test drive, just local to me. You know, it seemed to drive absolutely fine, no issues. I noticed that the throttle response was much improved. You know, the turbo seemed to spool a lot quicker. We seemed to have more power lower down in the rev range. And everything seemed fine. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to get it up to temperature, so I'll drive it for around 15-20 minutes or so. I'll get it right up to temp, and then I'll, you know, floor it essentially, just to make sure that we don't have any issues, make sure the turbo sounds good, and make sure we you know, are having the torque that we would expect. Now, initially I went on a dual carriageway and it seemed okay, and then I put my foot down, went to around 4,000 RPM, and it didn't really seem like the torque was there at the top end. Now, I know this car has been remapped, it's been tuned before, not to accommodate for the EGR and the DPF though, so I didn't know if it was something to do with the previous map that was on the car. I didn't really think too much of it anyway. But then, you know, I tried it a few more times and still it was pretty much the same. And then I came off a dual carriageway, went round an island, came back on, and then I went to floor it again. And then that's when I noticed a massive issue. So first and foremost, we lost power. It wasn't like a massive drop off, but it's sort of like the power peaked and then it just sort of like tailed off. And then I looked in the rear view mirror and a hell of a load of smoke out of the back, out of the exhaust, of course. And I was like, what has just happened here? We may have a big issue. So luckily, there was actually a lay-by. There was a parking area around 10 seconds after this happened. So I managed to get off the dual carriageway, pull over, switch the engine off, and that is a key point. I managed to switch the engine off. The engine didn't die on us, it didn't stall or anything like that. So that's when I thought, okay, the engine must be okay, because if it was, you know, a seized engine or something like that, it would have literally just cut out on us. So the fact that I managed to switch the engine off, that was all good. I then, of course, checked in the engine bay. At this point, it was very, very dark, but I managed to get my phone, shine a torch into the engine bay, and I noticed a hell of a load of oil below the turbo. And yeah, I was very, very worried, to say the least, at this point. This isn't even my car, by the way. I don't even know if I've mentioned. This is a friend's car that I was doing a whole load of work on. And yeah, I was very, very worried at this point. I thought, I must have done something wrong. What could I have done wrong? And then you go through all the scenarios in your head. Could I have done this wrong? Could I have done that wrong? But then I thought, you know, we have a big oil leak. I haven't touched anything, you know, oil related. I haven't touched any of the oil lines going to the turbo or anything like that. But I thought, you know, the turbo, it must have, you know, basically gone kaput. You know, must be now leaking oil externally, and it must be leaking oil internally, you know, through the exhaust, and that's what the smoke was out the back. Now, I don't really want to say too much else, because of course we are going to strip the engine, you know, all of the engine covers off again and have a good look actually what the issue is. But yeah, that wasn't the best last night. That wasn't fun at all. But yeah, I think we'll, like I said, get outside, start stripping the engine covers down and see what we find. Okay, so kind of what I expected but not what I hoped has happened. The turbo has cacked its pants. Let me show you. So I've just went ahead and removed these covers from the engine bay and having a look down at the turbo. That's not supposed to be there, is it? Yeah. I think that might be excessive play. Turbo's dead. Okay, so it's not looking good, is it? Looks like we need a turbo replacement on this X5. Now, first and foremost, do I think it is a result of the work that I've done on this car? So as I mentioned, I've done new intake manifold, EGR and cooler delete, DPF and catalytic converter delete, glow plug module, crankcase breather, a couple of other things as well. No, I don't think this turbo failure is a result of that work that I've done. However, after doing all this work, I think it has potentially not necessarily sped up the failure, but highlighted it a bit more. So essentially, I think the turbo was on its last legs anyway, but the fact that we've now just freed up the exhaust, you know, we've taken away the EGR, we've allowed the turbo to spin freer and with less restrictions, I think it's, you know, a little bit extra boost potentially going through it. It's, you know, just killed it off. Now, as I mentioned, the car has already been remapped. It's been tuned by a previous owner. No idea the quality of that map, no idea who it was mapped by. So could it be down to a bad map why this turbo has gone? I mean, it has covered 114,000 miles, but I don't know, that doesn't seem like excessively high miles for a turbo to go, but I guess it all comes down to how the car is driven. You know, is it, you know, warmed up and cooled down properly? Has it had regular oil changes? You never really know these things when you are buying a car. It is a bit of a gamble, but yeah, it is what it is now. The fact that the turbo has gone, of course, it means we have to replace the turbo itself, but it has failed in pretty spectacular fashion. I can't really see properly. I can't really get a camera down in there. I have to, you know, strip some more covers off and whatever to have a proper look at it. But I did notice some oil shavings, you know, around the lip of the turbo itself. I can't think what it's called. But then I also noticed some metal shavings around the anti-shudder valve as well, going into the intake manifold. So we could potentially have an even bigger issue on our hands if some of those metal shavings have made their way through the intake and into the engine itself. That could have caused even bigger problems. Now, like I said, I did switch the engine off myself. It seemed to sound fine. There wasn't any metallic, you know, rattling or knocking or anything like that. So that is good, of course. But, you know, metal shavings, especially if they are decent sized chunks, they could potentially damage pistons. They could damage valves and things like that. So we're not really going to know if any of that has occurred until we have a deeper look. The only thing that I can hope is that the shavings that have came off were small enough to just go straight through the intake valves, you know, into the combustion chamber, then straight out of the exhaust. That's the only thing that I can wish for, really. The fact that we have the CAT and the DPF off is kind of a good thing at this point, because any of that, you know, debris that's potentially came from the turbo is not now stuck after the turbo. It's literally, it would have just gone straight out of the exhaust, hopefully. But yeah, it's a bit of a crap one. I guess I have to let my friend know the bad news now, but we're going to try and make as best of the situation as possible. I really don't have the time or patience to do any more work on this car now, but I think I do owe it to my friend to, you know, get this sorted. So yeah, it is what it is. It's definitely not gonna be fun doing the turbo on this. If it was a later N57 or N47 turbo, turbo swap on them would be, a couple of hours job and you're done. But when it comes to the M57 single turbo, you kind of have two options. So you either go from underneath, where you remove the downpipe, pretty much what I've just done to gut the thing. I'm definitely not doing that again. Am I heck doing that again? I'm definitely not lying on my back, removing the exhaust and basically undoing all the work I've just done. So you have that option, or you remove the rocker cover, which, yes, it sounds ridiculous why you'd have to remove the rocker cover, but essentially the rocker cover contains the airbox, and that section of the airbox sits on top of the exhaust manifold. And obviously the exhaust manifold sits directly on top of the turbo. So rocker cover will have to come off, injectors will have to come out, intake manifold will have to come off, fuel rail will have to come off, all the fuel pipes will have to come off. Like I said, rocker cover off, access the heat shields, exhaust manifold off, turbo off, and then I think that's going to be the most likely option that we'll take. But yeah, we're going to have to replace a whole bunch of other gaskets as well. And yeah, it's going to be a fun process or not. But yeah, I know a few of you guys were wondering what has happened to the car, what has been the case with it. I guess now we know, complete turbo failure. But yeah, on to the next one, I suppose. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this video anyway. Give it a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I'll see you all in that next one.